That night when he turned off my phone and locked the door, I realized the man I had loved for 7 years was no longer the same person. His silence was cold, almost rehearsed. I could see it in his eyes, something dark, something he didn't want me to find out. But what he didn't know was that I had already started recording everything days ago. Every whisper, every argument, every cruel word. I had a feeling I'd need proof summed, and that day had finally come. My name is Emily Carter, and this is how I turned his abuse into his downfall. We were once that perfect couple people envied, smiling at parties, holding hands in front of his friends, posting anniversary pictures with captions like "forever and always." But behind those fake smiles were nights filled with shouting, tears, and bruised emotions that never healed. It started small, a raised voice here, a cold silence there. Then came control. He wanted to know where I was every second, who I talked to, what I wore. I used to think it was love. Until love started to hurt. I still remember the first time he cut off my phone battery by accident. He said he didn't want me distracted during dinner. I laughed it off. But the second time he took my charger with him to work. The third time he switched off the Wi-Fi, saying you don't need social media when I'm here. Slowly, he isolated me piece by piece until I was a shadow of the woman I used to be. But one evening when I caught a glimpse of his messages, a woman named Clara, saved under David's office, my blood froze. The words were too personal, too familiar. "Miss your smell. Last night was amazing." My hands trembled but my heart stayed calm. I didn't confront him, not yet, because I knew the kind of man he was, charming to outsiders, a monster behind closed doors. If I accused him, he'd twist everything back on me. So instead I smiled. And that night I bought a small recording device online. It looked like a lipstick, but it recorded every sound around it. My plan had begun. For a few weeks I recorded our conversations, his tone, his insults, the times he threw things when I didn't agree. I hid the device near the bedside lamp. He never noticed. The more I recorded, the more I learned. He was not just cheating, he was planning to frame me for something much darker. I overheard him talking on the phone about money, fake accounts, and my name being used. My heart pounded so hard that I thought he could hear it. Then came the night that changed everything. He came home drunk, eyes wild, voice cold. He said I had embarrassed him by calling his friend when he didn't answer. I told him I was worried. That's when he grabbed my phone and said, "You don't need this anymore." He switched it off and threw it in the drawer. Then he locked the door from inside and pushed me to the floor. I screamed, but no one could hear. My phone was dead. My neighbors were far. But the lipstick recorder on the lamp was quietly capturing every sound, every threat, every slap of his hand against the wall. When he fell asleep, I didn't cry. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, whispering to myself, "Keep breathing, Emily. You have proof now." The next morning he acted normal, made coffee, kissed my forehead and left for work like nothing had happened. But something inside me had changed. I was done being scared. I was done being silent. I transferred all the recordings to my laptop and backed them up on a hidden drive. Every file was named with the date and time. When I listened to them, I could barely recognize my own voice, trembling, begging him to stop. But in between those sounds, I found my strength. Each cruel word he said was a reminder of what I had endured and what I would never allow again. For days I pretended everything was normal. I laughed at his jokes, cooked dinner, and even sent him sweet texts. But inside I was building my revenge, quietly, strategically. I contacted a lawyer through an old college friend, sent her a few recordings and asked her what I could do. She said, "Emily, if you can get one more recording, proof that he's threatening you, we can take him down legally." So I waited. One night he told me we'd be going out of town for the weekend. I didn't want to, but I knew this was the chance. I slipped the recorder into my purse and followed him. The cabin he booked was far from the city, quiet, surrounded by trees, no neighbors. My stomach turned with fear. That night he started yelling again, accusing me of cheating, of spying, of being ungrateful. The words poured like poison, and I stayed silent, letting him say everything. Because every second of it was being recorded. When he slammed his hand on the table and said, "If you ever leave me, I'll make sure no one ever finds you," I knew that was it, the moment I needed. The next morning he went out to get groceries. I packed my bag, took the recorder and ran. My hands shook as I reached the main road and flagged a passing truck. The driver asked if I was okay. I just nodded, clutching my purse tight. Inside it was my freedom and his destruction. That night I stayed at a motel, plugged in my phone and finally called the lawyer. I sent her everything, the recordings, the dates, the proof. She told me to stay hidden for a few days, and I did. Alone in that small room, watching the ceiling fan spin slowly, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, peace. But what happened next turned everything upside down again. Because 2 days later he found out I had escaped, and this time he wasn't going to let me go easily. The night I left him I thought it was over, but evil doesn't die that easily. It was around 3 a.m. when I heard a knock on the motel door. It was soft at first, then harder, angrier. I froze. My heart slammed in my chest as I peeked through the curtain, and there he was, Ryan, my husband. His car parked just outside, headlights still on. He looked furious, his hands clenched, his jaw tight. I backed away from the window and grabbed my phone. He shouted my name. "Emily, I know you're in there, open the damn door." The motel manager called the police before I could even ask. But by the time the sirens came closer, Ryan was gone, speeding away into the dark. I sank to the floor, shaking, tears spilling down my face. I wasn't crying out of fear anymore. I was crying because I knew I couldn't run forever. It was time to end it once and for all. The next morning I met with my lawyer, Samantha, a tough woman with eyes that saw through lies. When she played the recordings in her office, even she went silent. My voice trembling, his voice shouting, the sound of glass breaking, everything. After the last recording, she looked at me and said, "Emily, this is more than abuse. This is attempted control, emotional torture, and threats of harm. We'll get him for this." I nodded, but I wasn't satisfied. I wanted him to feel what I had felt, powerless, cornered and watched. So while Samantha worked on the legal part, I planned my own. I created a fake email under a different name and started sending Ryan messages pretending to be someone from his office, the same David, whose name he used to hide his affair with Clara. I wrote, "Clara's getting nervous. She said the wife might know, better delete everything." Within minutes he replied, "I already did, she won't find anything. I handled it." He didn't know I was watching him panic. Every email, every deleted text, I saved all of it. Each word was proof of deceit. Then came the day of the restraining order hearing. He showed up in a clean suit, fake smile plastered across his face, pretending to be the perfect husband. He told the judge I was unstable, that I made up stories to get attention, but Samantha calmly played one of the recordings. The courtroom went silent as his voice filled the room. "If you ever leave me, I'll make sure no one ever finds you." He froze, his face went pale. The judge's tone changed immediately. Within an hour I got a full restraining order and Ryan was ordered to stay 500 feet away from me. But he didn't. A week later, I saw him parked outside my new apartment, watching me from his car. That night, I decided to finish this game my way. I called a tech friend, Jake, who worked in cyber investigations. I told him everything from the fake accounts to the manipulation. He helped me trace Ryan's calls and messages. What we found made my blood run cold. He had installed a small tracking app on my old phone months ago. That's how he found me at the motel. But Jake smiled and said, "You know, Emily, we can use this." Together, we created a trap. Jake designed a fake phone backup folder and placed it on a new cloud drive. Inside were fake evidences that made it look like I had hidden large amounts of his money, all fake documents, fake screenshots, fake transactions. We knew Ryan couldn't resist checking. 2 days later, I got a text from him. "You think you're smart, but I found your files. You'll go to jail for this." That was exactly what I wanted, because the only way he could have seen those fake files was by hacking into my private drive, a direct violation of the restraining order. We handed the proof to the police. Within 24 hours, Ryan was arrested for cyber harassment, stalking, and violation of court order. I went to the station, sat in front of the glass wall and saw him handcuffed for the first time. He glared at me like a cornered animal. I leaned forward and said quietly, "You turned off my phone so I couldn't call for help, but I recorded everything instead." He didn't speak, he just looked away, defeated. For the first time in years, I felt free. When I stepped outside the police station that day, the air felt lighter, the sun brighter. I went to a small cafe downtown, ordered a coffee and called Samantha to thank her. She said, "Emily, you did this yourself. You built your own justice." But even then, I knew my story wasn't over, because when I went home that night, I found a small envelope under my door. Inside it was a photo me, taken that morning at the cafe from a distance, and written on the back were 3 words that sent chills down my spine. "I'm still watching." My hands shook as I dropped the photo. I looked out the window, nothing but darkness, but somewhere in that silence I could feel him or someone waiting. I didn't know it then, but that was just the beginning of the second storm. one that would change everything I thought I had won. When I saw that photo of myself, taken from a distance, printed with the words "I'm still watching," something inside me broke again. I had fought for my freedom, but the fear he planted in me still lived. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch, lights on, holding my pepper spray, waiting for any sound, any movement outside. By sunrise, I decided I wouldn't live like that anymore. I called Detective Harris, the officer who had handled Ryan's case before. When I showed him the picture, he frowned and said, "He's not supposed to be anywhere near you, Emily. We'll find out who did this." But even as he spoke, I saw doubt in his eyes, because people like Ryan, they don't stop easily. They think control is their birthright. That evening I checked my security cameras. I had installed them recently, every corner of the apartment covered. When I replayed the footage from midnight, my hands started trembling. There he was, Ryan, standing outside my building, staring up at my window for nearly 20 minutes. No mask, no hesitation, just watching. I sent the footage to the detective immediately. Within hours, an arrest warrant was issued, but by the time they got to his place, he was gone. His apartment was empty, his car abandoned 2 blocks away. It was like he vanished. Days turned into weeks. I tried to move on. I joined a women's support group, started working again as a freelance writer, and even rented a new apartment across town. Life began to feel normal, almost peaceful, but deep inside I knew it was the calm before another storm. And I was right. One night I received an anonymous email. The subject line said, "Play this before you sleep." My heart raced as I clicked on it. The video started blurry, then focused, and I froze. It was me sitting on my couch just last week, typing on my laptop. The same night I thought I was alone. The video was taken through my own window. Someone had been recording me from outside. Tears blurred my vision, but anger replaced fear this time. I wasn't that helpless woman anymore. I backed up the video, called Detective Harris again, and said, "I want this over, once and for all." We traced the IP address of the email. It led back to a motel 2 towns away. The same place I had once hidden after escaping him. It felt like fate, circling back to the same spot where it all began. The detective arranged an undercover operation. They asked me to come, pretending to check in, while officers waited nearby. When I entered that motel, my knees felt weak, but my heart was steady. The air smelled like old cigarettes and fear. I walked to the reception desk, asked for a room key, and turned toward the hallway. Then, out of nowhere, a door opened, and there he was. Ryan. He looked thinner, darker, eyes filled with obsession. He smiled faintly and said, "You really thought you could destroy me?" I stayed calm. I pressed the tiny panic button Detective Harris had given me, hidden inside my bracelet. "You already destroyed yourself, Ryan," I said softly. "You just don't know it yet." He laughed, stepped closer. "You love this attention, don't you? Playing the victim, recording me, making me the monster. You wanted control, Emily, but control is mine." He didn't realize that the whole conversation was being recorded live through my hidden mic. Within moments, the hallway flooded with police lights. Officers rushed in, shouting commands. Ryan tried to run, but there was nowhere left to go. They pinned him to the floor as he screamed my name, spitting hatred, his voice echoing down the hallway. I stood there shaking, tears in my eyes, not from fear, but from relief. The war was finally over. Ryan was charged not only for violating the restraining order but also for stalking, illegal surveillance and harassment. His trial became a public case. News channels picked it up as the husband who watched too much. The recordings I'd made, the camera footage, the emails, all of it went viral. People who once pitied him now saw the truth. The charming husband was a predator. I sat in the courtroom the day they sentenced him to 5 years in prison. He looked at me one last time before the officers took him away. "You think you won," he said, smirking. I leaned forward and whispered, "I didn't win, Ryan, I survived." The crowd went silent. Months later, I moved to a new city, changed my name, and started a podcast for women who survived abuse. I told my story not as a victim, but as proof that silence is the abuser's greatest weapon, and truth is the revenge they never expect. Every time I hit record on my microphone, I remember that lipstick-shaped recorder, the one that saved my life, the one that turned my pain into justice. Now when I walk down the street, I don't look over my shoulder anymore. I don't check my phone in fear. I don't wait for a knock at the door, because I'm not the same woman who once begged for help. I'm Emily Carter, and I recorded everything. The end.